This race was a hell of a lot better than the Southern 500, let me tell you. And we're going to be getting into all that, and there's a lot to talk about as far as news of the week, so buckle up. This is going to be a pretty extended episode. This is The Fuel. What's happening, ladies and germs? This is the Packerman, and welcome to today's edition of The Fuel here on this Motorsport Monday, where today we're going to be talking about the Federated Auto Parts 400 at the Richmond International Raceway, the second race of the round of 16. Sorry, my neck's a little bit sore for some weird ass reason. And at the time I'm recording this on Sunday evening, and I go back to work tomorrow after my vacation, so my vacation's almost over. Fuck. But at the very least, after the absolute craptastic race that was the Southern 500 last week, and the absolute reaming that I gave that race, I would say Richmond definitely delivered as far as giving us a pretty good race overall, especially considering that we only had one true caution the entire race, and it was a competition caution. Other than that, and other than the stage breaks, this race was clean and green. So this was about, under this current format, about as pure a race as you could get. And oh, look at that, we also had a lot more pure lead changes than we did in the Southern 500. 200 fewer miles than the Southern 500, yet we had more overall lead changes and a lot more pure lead changes, which means we saw a lot more passes and a lot more entertaining battles and strategy. Oh my god! Something that was sorely lacking in the Southern 500. And the funny thing is, Richmond has been kind of hit or miss the last decade or so. Sometimes it delivers a pretty good race, sometimes it delivers races, sometimes it delivers ball-busting, controversial moments like Spingate. Y'all remember that? When was that? 2013? Like, holy shit. But this was Richmond's one and only race this year, of course, due to COVID, and it actually turned out to be pretty good. I mean, it wasn't, a super special banger or anything of that nature, but considering what we saw last week, this was a damn good race, in my opinion. I mean, again, not the greatest thing in the entire world, but I mean, it was still a damn fine race overall, which we're going to be talking about here in a bit. But before we get into all that, we got some bookkeeping to take care of. So let's go ahead and get into the news of the week. Alright, since most of the news stories this week is basically NASCAR stuff, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and basically get the results for the previous 4 IndyCar Series races. Yes, 4. Because there were 2 at Gateway, and then there were 2 this weekend at Mid-Ohio. I was going to save the Mid-Ohio stuff until later, but since I'm recording this a little bit later in the evening after all the Mid-Ohio shit has been done, I can go ahead and give you the results of all 4 races. So, first up, race number 1 at Gateway was won by Scott Dixon after a terrific battle with Takuma Sato. Of course, these were the 2 guys who battled for the win in the Indianapolis 500. And then you had Pato O'Ward, who led a large chunk of the race, 94 laps, but ended up in 3rd. That guy, I think, is going to be something in the series. Colton Herta, which I'll be talking more about here in a little bit, he ended up in 4th. And then you had Marcus Ericsson rounding out the top 5, and then Renus VK, I think that's how you pronounce it, Ryan Hunter-Reay, Felix Rosenquist, Tony Kanaan, in one of his final starts probably. And then Connor Daly rounds out the top 10. That was race number 1 at Gateway. Second race on Sunday saw a tremendous flip-flop with Joseph Newgarden taking the win. By about 1.5 seconds over, once again, Pato Award. So his second straight podium. Will Power comes home in the 3rd position. Rennis VK in 4th, Scott Dixon in 5th. Colton Herta led 10 laps and came home in 6th. Then you had Felix Rosenquist, Connor Daly. Takuma Sato started from the pole and led 66 laps before finishing 9th. And then Santino Ferrucci rounded out the top 10. And then they finally rescheduled Mid-Ohio to September 12th and the 13th, which was this weekend. So here were the results for race number 1 at Mid-Ohio. Will Power basically won from the pole in dominating fashion, leading 66 of the race's 75 laps and extending his 1 race win per year streak that has started pretty much since he debuted in IndyCar. And also this weekend he earned his just mind-blowing 60th career pole. That is insane, dude. In IndyCar, 60th IndyCar pole. That is incredibly insane, considering that there aren't that many freaking races in a season. Justin Newgarden came home in 2nd, and then Alexander Rossi, his first good run of the year, I think, in 3rd. Then you had Graham Rahal, Ryan Hunter-Reay, Felix Rosenquist, Jack Harvey, Rennis VK, Colton Herta, and then Scott Dixon rounded out the top 10. Not a particularly good weekend for Scott Dixon, even though he finished in the top 10. I believe it was race 2. He actually spun out while running in the top 5, coming off of turn 1. He did recover to finish 10th, but you know. And then another win from pole. This time it is Colton Herta in the 88 car, leading 57 of 75 laps to take the win. Then you had Alexander Rossi with his 2nd straight podium. Then Ryan Hunter-Reay completing the podium. We had Ohio boy Graham Rahal, then Marcus Ericsson, and then rounding out the top 10 was Simon Pagenaud, Will Power, Joseph Newgarden, Pato Award, and Scott Dixon. Which means that the point standings after Mid-Ohio look like this, with 3 races remaining. You have 2 IndyCar road course races, and then the St. Petersburg Grand Prix to cap it off. Scott Dixon continues to lead the way, but his point lead has shrunk to 72 over Joseph Newgarden. Pato Award continues to hold down the 3rd spot. And then you have Colton Herta, Will Power, and Graham Rahal. And that is your top 6 in the point standings with 3 races remaining. But before we continue, I want to spotlight Colton Herta real quick. This guy is the future of the IndyCar series. I don't think there's any question at this point. Because, I mean, let's think about this. This is just his 2nd full-time season in the IndyCar series. He entered last year as a 19-year-old rookie. In just 2 full-time seasons, he has amassed 3 wins. He won at COTA early in 2019, and then he won the NCAP at Laguna Seca, and then here in 2020 he ended up in victory lane here in one of the Mid-Ohio races, the 2nd one. He's only 20 years old. He's going to have, I think, he's going to have a long career in IndyCar. And at just 20 years of age, he's already amassed 3 wins. Like, this guy is already good before, I mean, he's not, I don't even think this guy is in his prime yet, to be honest. You know, driving for, of course, a good team in Andretti Autosport, but I mean, this guy's only 20 years old, and he's performing like he's been a veteran of the sport for years. And of course, you got guys like Pato Award, Venus Rike, I think will be a good addition. He's been doing good this year. Of course, you still have the old veterans like Takuma Sato, who won his 2nd Indianapolis 500, and Scott Dixon, who moved into 3rd on the all-time wins list behind only Mario Andretti and AJ Foyt. But then you got guys like Colton Herta, and I think I said as much last year. This guy is the future of the IndyCar series. I think this is their next big star. You know, you got guys like, of course, Scott Dixon and Joseph Newgarden, you know, who are big stars in their own right. Will Power, Ryan Hunter-Reay. But I don't think there's any question that Colton Herta is the future of this series. I mean, if he's already winning races at this young of age, I mean, let's think about this. He's not even old enough to drink yet. He's not old enough to drink from the champagne bottle that they spray in Victory Lane. And he's already amassed 3 wins in the IndyCar series. I mean, that's just crazy to me. I mean, this guy is this guy is already good before, you know, he's in his prime. I mean, like I said, I don't think he's in his prime yet. So when he reaches his prime, his competition better look out, because I think this guy is the next big thing in IndyCar. I mean, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if he, you know, was the next Scott Dixon in that regard. You know, amassing, you know, all these wins and championships. You know, and I think Scott Dixon, I think he's going to get his 6th championship this year. So there's that. But I kind of wanted to spotlight Colton Herta because it's just incredible what he's accomplishing in IndyCar at such a young age. It's just crazy. But like I said, time to do some bookkeeping here. Mainly, it is silly season news, and there has been quite a bit of silly season news. It is just absolutely insane. Of course, we've all heard about, you know, Levine Family Racing. Of course, they're shutting down at the end of the year. I think I already mentioned that. And then you have Christopher Bell going over to Gibbs next year. There's still no word on where Eric Jones is going to end up, but there might be. There's definitely an opening somewhere, which I'll get to in a minute. But as far as extensions, Eric Almirola is one of those that are going to be staying in his ride at least for 1 more year. He re-signed with the 10 car for the 2021 season, and Smithfield has also re-signed as sponsor of that team as well. So that's obviously good news for Eric Almirola and Stewart Haas Racing. Another guy who signed a new deal to stay with his team is William Byron. Yep, he finally got his maiden career victory at Daytona, which got him into the playoff. And as a result of that, he has signed a 2-year extension with Hendrick Motorsports. So he is going to be the driver of that 24 car for the foreseeable future. And, you know, we have been expecting William Byron to break out for a while now. And to see him finally do it at, you know, the World Center Racing Daytona and finally get that first career win, you know, I think that was the tonic that he needed. And it's like that taste of victory is just going to make him just want it more now. He's going to like, yeah, I want to win more races, you know, and contend for championships. I don't think he's going to be contending for championships right off the bat because he's a lot like Colton Herta in that respect. Where this guy is a young guy. He's only 22 years of age. But I think he has many fruitful years in the Cup Series. But one guy who's not going to be in the Cup Series much longer, at least not on a full-time basis, is Jimmy Johnson. Because after he retires from full-time competition, he has actually signed a 2-year deal to drive for Ganassi Racing in IndyCar next year. That's right. He is going to be the new teammate of Felix Rosenqvist and Scott Dixon. Like, holy shit. That is a fucking dream team if I've ever seen one. I mean, you have the 7-time Cup champion and a potential 6-time IndyCar champion on the same team. I mean, that's just crazy for me to think about. Of course, Johnson had been really interested in moving over to open wheel racing for a bit to give that a shot. He's probably not going to. He's not going to do any of the ovals, except he might do the Indianapolis 500. That hasn't been confirmed yet. But he is definitely doing all the road course races, which makes up a large majority of the circuit. So it's going to be really interesting to see what Jimmie Johnson does in IndyCar next year. Typically, I mean, back in the early 2000s and even into the 2010s, it was the other way around. It was the open wheel guys that were moving from IndyCar to NASCAR, and now we're seeing kind of a flip-flop effect here with Jimmie Johnson moving from NASCAR over to IndyCar and giving that a shot. You know, and I respect that. I appreciate Jimmie Johnson kind of broadening his horizons a little bit, and giving IndyCar a shot and see if he can attain some kind of success over there as he did in NASCAR. But on that note, a team that's not going to be probably not going to be around for much longer, at least not under its current name, is Germain Racing. Ty Dillon is their current driver, but they are looking to sell the team after the 2020 season is done, due to the fact that their primary sponsor, Geico, decided to not renew their deal as far as sponsorship is concerned. I'm not exactly sure if that's a good look for Geico, especially considering that Geico is one of the 4 big primary sponsors of the Cup Series. And for them to just kind of, not resign with Germain Racing, which is going to force them to basically sell the team. I mean, I'm not sure I agree with that. So I think that's gonna leave a bitter taste in some people's mouths. But and a bit of a surprise move though, Bubba Wallace has announced that he is not going to be staying with Richard Petty Motorsports. He's going to be moving on after the 2020 season. So, there's a lot of places that he could land. He could land. Jimmie Johnson, of course, is retiring at the end of the year and moving over to IndyCar, so he might land at the 48 team. He might land with Chip Ganassi Racing in the 42 car, because obviously Kenseth's not. I mean, Kenseth's was just an emergency type of deal. So he's got options. So it'll be interesting to see where he lands after this season. Of course, he's been bringing in some big name sponsors too. So he's going to be bringing in some sponsorship money with him wherever he lands, and that's going to make him basically prime real estate for any big time team that wants him on their team. But then came, not only did we have that blockbuster bit of news as far as silly season, but that's it for the silly season stuff. But this was probably one of the biggest blockbusters of the year. It was announced that Auto Club Speedway, the 2-mile D-shaped oval in Fontana, California, is going to be converted into a half-mile Martinsville-Bristol hybrid. Ya what, mate? Like, this came out of friggin' nowhere, and they've already drew up like plans as to what it'll look like. And from the looks of it, it's going to keep part of the original front stretch for this new short track, and it is basically a D-shaped paperclip. Apparently, they're going to have high bank turns, and apparently, iRacing created a virtual version of, based on the plans that they were given, and it looks pretty friggin' fast. A couple reasons why they did this, and I think it was obviously financial. Let's be honest here. Number one, first and foremost, the racing there hasn't really been that good. I mean, last couple races have been real snooze fests, but I think the second one, and one of the reasons why they decided to do this, is because the asphalt was starting to get to the point where it's getting really old, and they were due for repave real soon anyways. And as we know, repaves usually kill the racing at a racetrack for a few years. So they decided, you know what, how about we just convert to a short track and add another short track to the schedule, because we've had the same 3 short tracks on the schedule since 1997. It's time to expand on that a little bit. But the fact that they're going to be converting Auto Club from a D-shaped 2-mile oval to a half-mile short track is a bit surprising in some respects. But I mean, I think the third and biggest thing is the fact that land in California right now is expensive. So not only will this shorten kind of the footprint that the Auto Club Speedway has, but you know, they could sell some of the land off, make some money that way, especially with land as expensive as it is, and with the land that they do have around the racetrack, they could add some like amenities and shit like that. But I think the biggest and most important reason is upkeep cost, because keeping a 2-mile D-shaped oval, you know, up to snuff year after year after year, especially with NASCAR not being as popular as it once was, is pretty damn expensive. When you convert it into a half-mile oval, all of a sudden the upkeep cost comes way down, because you don't have to, you know, you don't have as much space to have to, you know, upkeep, you know, so that reduces the upkeep cost by quite a bit. But this was definitely the biggest blockbuster, I think, of the year. Auto Club will be converting to a half-mile oval, and apparently it will come after the 2021 race, and then they'll start working on it to have it ready for 2022. So that's going to be interesting to see. But on that note, let's move over to the Gluck poll. I have basically come to the conclusion that Jeff Gluck's weekly poll that he puts up after each race, asking was the race any good, and he has yes and no options, and I've basically come to the conclusion that the Gluck poll is completely unreliable. And also, I've also come to the conclusion that the NASCAR fan base just doesn't know what good racing is. I mean, they really don't. Because you remember last week when I was in the middle of my little spiel that I said that because of what happened at the end of the Southern 500, people were going to be overrating that race to all hell. And oh, lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. There were almost 16,000 total votes. I mean, I know that's not exactly a big sample size in comparison to how many people actually watch the races, but I mean, when you consider the fact that almost 16,000 people voted on this, Jeff Gluck asked, was Darlington a good race? Now, objectively, it was probably the most boring race of the year. Nobody could pass. You know, the only lead changes we really saw were on green flag pit stops. I think there was only like 1 or 2 pure lead changes the entire race. I mean, really, the only thing that anybody's going to remember from that race was what happened between Elliott and Truex. You know, but seriously, what else do we remember about that race? But in typical NASCAR fandom fashion, you know, for them, a shit race is going to become a good race if something happens at the end that gets people talking. 72% of the voters said that Darlington was a good race. Like how? How is a boring ass race like that get so much praise? I mean, Eric Estep even gave it a 55%, which, I mean, it still marks out to just barely above average, but that's still giving it way too much credit. You know, so Darlington was just an absolute shit-tastic race. You know, then we get to this week where the racing was actually really good. There was only 1 caution the entire day, so this race was about as pure as it gets. There was good action on track, more lead changes, which is amazing, more pure lead changes, which is great, and it was just a pure race overall. There was strategy. You know, there was 1 stop versus 2 stops, whether that would work out. And even though the poll wasn't complete when I took this screenshot, there were still like 15,000 people, well, 14,000 people that voted. Was Richmond a good race? 56% voted no. So I'm honestly convinced that most of this NASCAR fan base just watches the races for the wrecks. Because, I mean, the fact that they said Darlington was a good race and Richmond was not a good race makes about as much sense as a ventilated condom. It's a bunch of fucking nonsense. Like, I'm convinced that this fan base just doesn't know diddly squat about what a good race is. You know? And I honestly don't think a lot of them are critical thinkers, and I think a lot of them just watch racing, NASCAR racing for the crashes, which, and I've said this time and time again, if you're watching NASCAR for the wrecks, you're watching the wrong sport, sunshine. You want to watch that fucking bullshit? Go watch a demolition derby. You know, you'll get more enjoyment out of that instead of watching NASCAR racing. You know, a lot of us love to watch the racing, you know, for the side-by-side battles, the insane strategies that can come about, you know, that sort of shit, not fucking demo derbies. You know, we don't want drivers getting hurt from crashes. I mean, that's just fucking nonsense. But, you know, trying to reason with this fan base, you know, is about as fruitless as trying to sew pocket change onto a moldy sock. Absolutely fucking pointless and nonsensical. So, you know, it is what it is. But am I surprised? No. This fan base is usually fucking dumb anyways. So, yeah, that's just how I feel about that. And if you're offended by that, well, then you must be one of the dumb motherfuckers that thought Darlington was a good race and Richmond was not. Fucking stupid. That's what it is. Alright, so I'm done ranting about that shit, so let's go ahead and get into the race review itself. Alright, so here is your race review for the 2020 Federated Auto Parts 400 at Richmond. The stages broke down like this. Stage 1 was 80 laps, Stage 2 was 155 laps, and Stage 3 was 165 laps, for a total of 400. So based on the formula that they now have set up for qualifying, Harvick starts from the pole. He leads lap 1. Hamlin gets by Byron for 5th. Dillon nudges by Logano for 2nd. Austin Dillon really impressing so far in these playoffs with a couple of top 5 finishes. And then he nudges by Kevin Harvick to take over the lead on lap 21. Logano gets by Harvick for 2nd, and then we have our one and only caution on lap 30, which was the competition caution. So everyone comes in for service, and Dillon wins the race off pit road, so he leads on the restart. Hamlin gets a great run in the turn 1 under Dillon for the lead, but actually takes the lead 1 lap after the restart. So we have our second pure lead change on lap 39. Logano gets by Dillon for 2nd. It's pretty obvious that Dillon had a long run car at this point. Johnson had rear fender damage after scraping the wall. He didn't have a very good night at all. I think he ended up like 3 laps down by the end of it. We have a battle for 7th between Boyer, Byron, Elliott, and Truex. 4-car battle, and they were all like 4 cars under a blanket. It was awesome. Dillon starts trying to catch Hamlin for the lead. Boyer, Truex, and Elliott go 3 wide amongst lap traffic. And then Stenhouse joins the battle for 7th. And it was just a big old gaggle of cars. You know, and they still managed to keep it straight and not wrecking anybody, which was absolutely amazing. But Denny Hamlin ends up winning stage number 1. Everyone comes in for service, and Hamlin wins the race off pit road, except him and Austin Dillon were caught speeding on pit road. So that really shuffled things up quite a bit for stage 2. So as a result, Joey Logano leads the start of stage 2. Kyle Busch was up into the top 10 after having to go to the rear of the field for failing tech inspection twice. Keselowski challenges Logano for the race lead with Bowman in 3rd. Truex gets by Alex Bowman for the 3rd position. Then we have a battle for 4th between Bowman and Harvick, with Harvick winning that battle. And then we have a battle for the lead between Logano and Keselowski. Going into turn 3, Keselowski kind of pushed up a little bit, and I think Logano kind of reacted to it to not get into his teammate. And that allowed Keselowski to take over the lead on lap 121 for our 3rd pure lead change of the day. Truex tries his best to catch up to the 2 Penske cars. Austin Dillon just about gets back to the top 10 on lap 130 after speeding on pit road. Denny Hamlin didn't really have as good of a time, never really got back to the front. I don't even think he ever got back to the top 10 after his speeding penalty. Matt DiBenedetto and Kevin Harvick try a 2-stop strategy for stage 2, which really got a lot of crew chief's attention. So we have 1-stop strategies that began on lap 150. So I was like, man, crazy strategies coming into play in this second stage. Kez pits from the lead on lap 163. Harvick cycles out with the lead on the 2-stop strategy because he had fresher tires. And believe it or not, fresher tires at Richmond actually. And I mean, if you had like 10-20 lap fresher tires, that was about a 1.5 seconds per lap. You know, and it was like just crazy to see you know, the guys on old tires just getting smoked by the guys on the new tires, which makes sense. So Stenhouse gets nabbed for speeding. Dillon starts catching Harvick quickly on the fresher tires, and eventually catches up and passes him. So we have our fourth pure lead change on lap 182. Harvick comes in for his second stop, but hits the commitment box on the way in. That results in a commitment box violation and a penalty for Harvick, which was a drive-through penalty. Truex gets by Almirola for fifth, and then by Kyle Busch for fourth. Kez starts slowly catching Dillon for the lead with 30 laps to go in stage 2. Kez gets to the inside of Dillon for the lead but couldn't complete the pass. Truex gets by Logano for third. And then eventually Kez gets by Dillon for the lead in turn 1 for a fifth pure lead change on lap 218. And then Harvick unlaps himself despite the fact that he had to come in for a drive-through penalty for the commitment box violation. So that was pretty impressive. Dillon keeps things close with Kez, but Keselowski ends up winning stage number 2. At this point I was like, yeah, this is a lot better than the Southern 500. Everyone comes in for service and Keselowski wins the race off pit road. So it's pretty obvious at this point that if the race stayed completely green in stage 3, which it did, we would see the battle of one stop versus two stops, which would end up, you know, playing out. And it was pretty obvious 2 stops at the end of the race was the way to go. So stage 3 was 165 laps. Kez leads the start of stage 3. Dillon and Kyle Busch go side by side for fifth as Dillon starts this run extremely loose. There wasn't a whole lot that went on at the beginning of the stage, but then we started to see the pit stops begin on lap 293 for the 2 stoppers. Dillon gets by Kyle Busch for fifth. And there were a lot of teams that were doing the 2 stopper, but Kurt Busch and Matt Kenseth decided to try the 1 stopper strategy and see what happens. Logano gets by Kenseth for second and then blows by Kurt Busch for the lead. Our 6th pure lead change on lap 308. Kez is right on Logano's back bumper for the race lead. Kurt Busch pits on lap 314 for his final pit stop. Kez gets by Logano for the lead in turn 1 for a 7th pure lead change on lap 316. We have a battle for second between Logano, Truex, and Dillon. And then Dillon tries to come down pit road, but overcooks it and has to come around one more lap, which costs him several seconds. And I think that mistake ended up costing him the race win. Stops begin on lap 341 among the leaders. Kurt Busch cycles out with the lead on the 1 stopper. Dillon actually cycled ahead of Kez, but because of his earlier mistake of not getting onto pit road as good as, or missing the pit road, Keselowski was basically right on his bumper. Both Dillon and Keselowski get by Kurt Busch to take over the lead. Austin Dillon officially leads on lap 351, and then Brad Keselowski takes the lead for good on lap 352 for our 8th and 9th pure lead changes of the day. Truex gets by Dillon for second with 40 laps to go because, again, Dillon is a long run car. Then we have a battle for third between Dillon and Logano that goes on to about 9 laps to go. Dillon actually managed to get back by Logano for third, but then Logano fights back and retakes it. Kurt Busch actually ended up a lap down, so the 1 stopper didn't really work out in his favor. But Brad Keselowski ends up calling his shot because he had said earlier this week that if we didn't dominate this race and win, it would be a disappointment. Well, much like Babe Ruth, he called his shot and won at Richmond to advance to the round of 12. This race took less than 3 hours to complete. That's blazing quick. 2 hours and 56 minutes to be exact. So, Harvick, of course, advanced to the round of 12 with his win in the Southern 500. Keselowski advances to the round of 12 with his win, and with a 12th place finish, that secures Hamlin enough points to advance him to the round of 12. So, there's that. So, a pretty dull ending to the race. I mean, the battle for the win pretty much ended at lap 352 when Keselowski got by Dillon, and he pretty much held a 2.5 second lead over Truex for the rest of the race. But, I mean, this was a clean and green race, and I enjoyed it. It was a pretty good race overall, and it was a hell of a lot better than Darlington last week. So with that out of the way, let's get into the results and all that good stuff. Alright, so lead change count. We had 19 overall lead changes in this race, with 9 pure lead changes. So much better than the Southern 500 last week. Star of the race. For his efforts in this race, and considering how he's just blowing expectations out of the water, Austin Dillon was the star of the race this race, because I mean, nobody expected him to be doing this well here in the playoff, considering, you know, his one win at Texas was a bit of a strategy call. But I mean, give credit where credit's due. I mean, he finished second in the Southern 500, led some laps in this race, and ended up with a top 5 result. So I mean, props to him on a job well done. As far as reject of the race, considering that there weren't a whole lot of incidents during this race, in fact there were very few of them, it was really hard to pick a reject of the race, but I'm going to have to give it to Ryan Blaney, because I mean, a lot of people pegged him as a dark horse for the championship, and he is dead last out of all 16 drivers thus far. You know, him and that pit crew have just not gotten it together, and it's been like that for a while now. I mean, they definitely been the third wheel, so to speak, at Penske Racing. I mean, I don't know what the hell is going on, but if they don't turn things around next week at Bristol, they're looking at a first round exit, which would be a huge surprise, you know, considering how highly touted Ryan Blaney is. You know, despite the fact that he still only has the 4 career wins, I mean, you know, a lot of people picked him as a dark horse for the championship this year, and he might be out in the first round. You know, so they really need to find something at Bristol to turn things around. Alright, so with that out of the way, let's take a look at the race results and point standings for the Federated Auto Parts 400. Brad Keselowski, of course, with the win, led 192 of the race's 400 laps. Martin Truex Jr. comes home in second, so that's his, I think that's his 9th top 5 finish in 10 races. That's insane. They would be 10 in a row if not for what happened last week. Joey Logano comes home in third after leading 45 laps. Austin Dillon in fourth. Chase Elliott with the top 5. Then you have Kyle Busch coming home in sixth despite having to start at the rear of the field. Kevin Harvick, Eric Almirola, Alex Bowman, and Clint Bowyer rounds out the top 10. So, here's how the points look heading into the elimination round at Bristol. And we'll find out who's going to get eliminated from the playoff and who's going to make it to the round of 12. So, the top 3, Kevin Harvick and Brad Keselowski, with their wins, move on to the round of 12. Denny Hamlin moves on based on points, because he has more points than he needs to advance. Still in the danger zone is Joey Logano and the 4th position. Then you have Martin Truex, Austin Dillon in 6th. He's looking really good right now. Then you have Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, Kyle Busch is plus 18, and then you have Eric Almirola, Kurt Busch, and Clint Bowyer, who's still in the plus, but their plus is single digits. William Byron is the first guy out with 3 points behind. Cole Custer is 8 points out. Matt DiBenedetto is 25 points out, and Ryan Blaney is 27 out heading into Bristol next week. So DiBenedetto and Blaney might be looking at a must-win situation if they can't find a way to get good cars next week. As for my final rating for the Federated Auto Parts 400 at Richmond, this was definitely a good race, a hell of a lot better than the Southern 500 last week. So my final rating, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. If we would have had a better finish, it definitely would have been higher, but I mean, when you have a clean and green race like this, and we still have the number of lead changes that we had, and the high number of pure lead changes that we had, you know, that's still good overall. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I'm not exactly feeling all that well. I'm feeling kind of lethargic at the moment. I don't know why. I'm just feeling kind of lethargic all of a sudden. Maybe it's the sheer amount of shit that I've been doing today. I'm doing a lot of video editing, house chores. I mean, I've done like 2 things of laundry today, taking the trash out, kind of consolidating my video games and shit. So I've been really busy today. course, I've been trying to get a lot done since this is my last day before I go back to work tomorrow. Oh, that's gonna suck so much ass. Especially since I can't stand Mondays. And of course, I'm saying this at the time I'm recording this. This is Sunday evening that I'm recording this. But this is going to be coming out late Monday evening as part of Motorsport Monday, so there's that. But I'm done. Next week is Bristol, and it's the Bristol night race, so that should be something to watch. Bristol's been really good the last couple of years, so hopefully that race will kick ass, especially since it's the elimination race. But thank you very much for watching this week, and until next time, this is the Packerman signing out. See you later. You better like and subscribe or face the consequences. You have been warned.